I am so excited to be leading my second ultimate wine retreat to Walla Walla, Washington this April. And I want you to come with me. It's 3.5 days, over 8 unique wine tasting experiences, 2 extravagant, luxurious dinners, a special welcome bag full of goodies, new friendships, and a whole lot of laughter and fun awaits you on this can't miss retreat. But don't just take it from me. Here's what past guests on this retreat have to say. Take the opportunity. It is spending, but worth it. It would be extremely difficult to arrange this kind of immersive experience on your own. Another said, I was surprised by the beauty and quality of everything we did. I didn't know much about Walla Walla and had no idea how stunning the tasting rooms were. And finally, one said it was so relaxing to just have an expert plan and curate the entire trip. I felt like I was a kid on a trip that my parents planned in the best way possible. Simply put, this is the escape you've been waiting for. Tickets for this retreat are the lowest they'll ever be at just $2,500 for the entire trip. And that includes 4 nights at the Finch Hotel. But there are only 8 spots left, so act fast. If you want to learn more and potentially sign up, head to my website, corkandfizz.com, and find the tab at the top that says Walla Walla Retreat. I will also have the link in the show notes. I am so excited to see your application roll in. Interested in learning about wine, but not sure where to start? You're in the right place. Welcome to the Cork and Fizz Guide to Wine podcast. I'm your host, Haley Bowman, and I'm so glad you're here. I'm a wine enthusiast turned wine educator and founder of the Seattle-based wine tasting business, Cork and Fizz. It is my goal to build your confidence in wine by making it approachable and lots of fun. You can expect to learn everything from how to describe your favorite wine to what to pair with dinner tonight, and so much more. Whether you're a casual wine sipper or a total cork dork like myself, this podcast is for you. So grab yourself a glass and let's dive in. Today, I'm going to be telling you about one of my favorite wine regions in the entire world. Walla Walla, Washington. It's a little bit of a mouthful, so I wanted to say that a little slowly. Walla Walla, Washington. Say that 5 times fast. I feel like this region is like a secret little getaway that very few people know about. I mean, if you don't live in like Washington or maybe Idaho on the other side or Oregon, you've probably never heard of it. I mean, unless, of course, you follow me on Instagram at Cork and Fizz, then I don't shut up about it. So you definitely know about Walla Walla. My hope is that by the end of this podcast, you will be trading your trip to Napa Valley for a trip to Walla Walla. Now, before we get into it, just a quick reminder, if you are not on my mailing list yet, I would love for you to join. When you do, you will get a free shopping guide that has 15 of my favorite wines under $15. Simply head to corkandfizz.com, scroll down to the bottom, and there'll be a little section where you can join the mailing list. I send out a weekly newsletter filled with wine tips, recommendations, special offers, just little tips and tricks along the way, and so much more. And be sure to check out my virtual tasting club, The Cork Crew. It is your opportunity to taste wine with me, but from the comfort of your own home. We get together twice a month, once to try new wines. Well, we try wines both times. I shouldn't say once to try both times we try new wines, but once is focused on, a dedicated tasting of 2 unique, fun wines. Sometimes they're from the same region. Sometimes they're the same grape, but from different regions. And sometimes they're just totally random wines that I thought would be fun to try together. We learn about them. We learn about where they're from, the grapes that they're made out of, and then, of course, do a tasting together. And then the second event of the month is one where we get to talk to other people in the wine world, like winemakers, sommeliers, authors, Everybody in the wine world has so much to share, and you get to learn so much from their experience. And these events have just been a ton of fun. So, if you want to give it a try, you can do so without the commitment. Yeah, you're in luck. Right now, I'm offering a free class pass to anybody who wants to try out the Court Crew. With this pass, you will be able to join a Court Crew event of your choosing. It doesn't have to be the next one, though. I mean, it should be the next one. What are you waiting for? But there's no strings attached. I don't need your credit card. I don't need you to sign up for a membership. I just need your email and you will be my guest. So simply head to corkandfizz.com/free class pass to get that free pass. All right, let's get into it. Okay, let's start with the basics for Walla Walla. So, Walla Walla is a small wine region that straddles the Oregon-Washington border. So, I do say Walla Walla, Washington, but technically part of Walla Walla is in Oregon, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. It is within the Columbia Valley wine region, which is basically like this massive wine region in Washington, where most wine regions in the state are also in Columbia Valley. It has over 3,000 acres of vineyards and more than 120 wineries. In terms of terroir, which again, remember that just means like sense of place, like what is the climate and the geography like? It is warm, semi-arid, and it's called a continental climate. Essentially, there isn't any water nearby to influence them. They produce wine varieties that love the sun, but can handle a cold winter. You see, in the winter, every 10 years or so, which honestly it's starting to happen even more than that, there are these deep freezes that can happen and they kill the vines. It gets so cold that the vines don't even just go dormant. They die from the cold. So many vineyard managers actually bury a cane, which if you think about a typical grapevine, like I'm guessing what comes to your head is the like T shape. So you have the trunk that comes up, and then there are canes on either side that make the T. And so vineyard managers have started to bury one of those canes each year for insurance, just in case the rest of the plant dies out. That one that's planted, the soil and having it underground actually keeps it insulated. And so it typically survives those really, really cold winters. Some vineyard managers, which if you remember talking to Brooke Delmas Robertson from Delmas SJR Vineyard, she actually created a new way of growing the grapes where she does these low goblets. Like think about picture your hand and like with your hand facing upward and like making like a cup shape, right? Like you're holding something in your hand. That's what she made the vines go into that shape, but very low to the ground so that she can bury the entire vine over the winter to keep it safe. It's really crazy. If you haven't heard that episode, go back to listen to it. I don't know the number, but just search Delmas or Delmas SJR, Brooke Delmas Robertson. You will find it. It's a great interview. Then in the summer, right? So in the winter, these vines have to survive the super cold. In the summer, it can get super hot with so much sunshine that vineyard managers need to be smart about shade. So a lot of times the canopy, which is all the leaves that are grown on the vines, will be used to kind of protect the grapes. Also, they are thinking a lot of places are trying planting vines closer together so that one row can shade the next. So again, an area that gets a lot of sun and some hot weather along with some very cold winters. And then rainfall wise, they get an average of just 15 inches per year. And some areas of Walla Walla get as little as 9 inches per year, which is less rainfall than the Gobi Desert gets. So not a lot of rainfall happening around here. Now in Walla Walla, there are two official appellations. There's the Walla Walla AVA, of course, and that encompasses the entire Walla Walla area. Then there's a very specific AVA called the Rocks District of Milton Freewater, and it's often just shortened to the Rocks District. This area is super special. Many have likened it to Châteauneuf-du-Pape in France due to a similar rocky soil. And when I say rocky soil, I mean when you're looking at the vineyard, you see these big rocks just sitting in the vineyard and you're like, where is the soil? Like it's just rocks. And these rocks, they came from, so the region used to be this massive ancient riverbed. And over time, there millions of cobblestones were deposited, and especially during the Missoula floods that happened during the last ice age. And these rocks that were deposited, they go up to 600 feet deep. And this, in comparison, now if we're thinking about Châteauneuf-du-Pape, which again is a very well-known region in the Rhone Valley of France, they have lots of rock, but it only goes down a few feet. Once you go down a few feet, you hit clay soil, which is very different versus here in the rocks district. You keep going all the way down and you keep getting more rocks, and it allows the roots to continue growing even deeper to look for water. So it's very, very cool. I think this area is just like, it's a must see. Like, it's so unique and so different. And actually seeing like all the rocks that these vineyards are growing in, it's so cool. And the wines that are made from these vineyards, they're super powerful. I keep saying super a lot, but like, I mean it. Very powerful, especially the Syrah. I think that's like the standout of Washington, but also the standout of Walla Walla in the Rocks District. Savory, it's got this salinity to it, lots of umami flavors, think like bacon fat and then some spice from black pepper, but also this nice fruitiness with blackberries and blueberries and a smooth acidity because of the minerality. So it's not sharp and biting your tongue, but it's just so nice that you want to go in for another sip. That is the wine that's being made in the Rocks District and why you got to check that out. All right, before we go too much into the wines, I could talk forever. Let's talk a little bit about history. I'm sure you're like, Haley, we started the podcast and you didn't do history. What is up with you? Yeah, I know. We put it in the middle this time. I thought I'd give you some basics first. So, Walla Walla means many waters. It's thought that Native Americans first arrived in the region in about the 1720s to 1740s, having traveled there from modern day Arizona and New Mexico. So, the name comes from those Native Americans that lived in the area before anybody else moved in and started growing vineyards. Now, the first vines weren't planted until 1974. So, when you think about how long, areas of France and Europe have been making wine, and then even how long California has been making wine, it is a very new region. So, first vines planted in 1974. They were planted by Gary Figgins of Leonetti Vineyards at the time. Figgins, along with a fellow drill sergeant from the Army, Rick Small, who was actually the founder of Woodward Canyon, they together mapped out the initial Walla Walla AVA while driving around in Figgins' 1971 truck. And it is also said they had a nice 6-pack of beer in the console between them. So this is a very rural area. And I mean, it honestly still is. This pair, Figgins and Small, they taught themselves how to make wine and became the pioneers of Walla Walla wine. Leonetti Cellars won Wine and Spirits magazine's American Wine Championship for their 1978 Cabernet Sauvignon. So imagine, like, it's funny because looking back, you can say, okay, so the vines were planted in 1974, so it only took 4 years for them to get that recognition. But now that I'm thinking about it, like, as somebody who's created their own business and like I'm in I've been in business for over 3 years now, and it's just like, man, 4 years can be like a long time to have to wait for the recognition. But in the wine world, that's such a short amount of time. So it was clear that Walla Walla was a great region to be producing grapes and making wine. So along with, like I said, the first ones were Leonetti and Woodward Canyon. After them, there were many wineries that followed in their footsteps. The next group was L'École number 41, Waterbrook, Pepperbridge, Seven Hills, and Cayuse. Now, in 1984, Walla Walla was officially named an AVA. Remember talking about the Rocks District just for fun? That one actually wasn't named an AVA until 2015, so it's very, very new. And now there are over 120 wineries in Walla Walla. I thought it would be fun to talk a little bit about why I love Walla Walla. Like, why do I not stop talking about it? What makes it so special? And honestly, if you do follow me on Instagram, you know that I've led, my first big retreat, I led in Walla Walla. So I'm a little biased, but also the question can be said, why did you choose Walla Walla, right, for your first spot? And I'm actually heading back again this April, so in 2024. And as I'm recording this, there are still a couple spots open. So if you are interested, feel free to reach out. I don't know what it'll look like by the time this is released, but who knows? There might be a spot open for you. So for the why do I love Walla Walla? It's easy, really. It's the feeling I get when I'm there. I spend so much of my life like stressed and worried about what needs to get done. Like, it's a million things running through my head at one time. Like, have we ordered groceries? Did I send that email to my team? Are we saving enough money for the future? And when I say we, this is usually my husband and I. And then, like, when was the last time we gave the dog a bath? Like, have I gotten all those tasks done that I needed to? Did I record the podcast in time so my manager can work on it? Like, do we ask our friends if they could watch Sadie for us while we take a trip to see family? It's just, I swear these things run through my brain all day, every day. And things will remind me all the time. My mind is just always racing, except in Walla Walla. When I'm there, there's just something about how like relaxed and chill it is that it's like my worries weren't even allowed in. Like they just disappear. They're like, this is not the right spot to be in right now. And I mean, I know it sounds kind of cheesy, but it's just the best way that I can describe it. Or like, you know, that feeling. So right now, while you're listening to this, I'm going to tell you to release the tension in your jaw, release the tension in your forehead, relax. Okay, that feeling that you're getting right now, right? While we are just relaxing and releasing the tension of either the evening when you were sleeping, or if you're listening to this in the afternoon and you're releasing all that tension that's built up all day, that is how I feel when I'm in Walla Walla. And the thing is, like, even more than just like the feeling of it, when it comes to the culinary and winemaking scene, there's still so much fun and exploration happening. So I remember being in Napa and my husband and I, we stopped at this small little tasting room. I've talked about it a lot. I mentioned it on the Chenin Blanc podcast a little bit ago. This little tasting room is where we tasted one of the best Chenin Blancs that either of us have ever had before. And I remember asking them, like, this spot was one of the only spots we found Chenin Blanc at. Like, why don't more places grow this? This clearly could do so well here. And simply put, it's because the land is too expensive to grow a grape that won't make as expensive of a wine as a Cabernet would. So, not a lot of places are going to really invest in that. Now, that's because Napa has become such a famous region and famous for particular wines. In newer regions like Walla Walla, and just less renowned, less well known of, there's still that opportunity for adventure and exploration. I mean, people are trying sparkling wines, dessert wines, earthy mouveds, fresh rosé of Cinsault, orange wines. I've had a textural Picpoul. I've had a bright and acidic Albarino. Like, they are doing a lot. Now, you're going to hear Walla Walla is very well known for their Syrah and their red wines, and that's not wrong. But the thing is, there's still so much of this other stuff happening that it's not an outlier to have something a little different on your like wine tasting menu versus in Napa. I think it's a little more of an outlier to have those unique things, or like you purposely have to like seek those out. And if you don't, just listening and hearing me saying this isn't enough, the great Karen McNeil, author of the Wine Bible, so she knows her stuff, has actually likened Walla Walla to the Napa Valley of 40 years ago. So we might not be able to invent a time machine for you to get to experience Napa when it was first starting out, but this is the closest you're going to get to that. So you can see what it's like to see a wine region when it's in early days, not like super early, but still decently early where they're still kind of trying things out. And then imagine like 40 years from now talking about, oh yes, Walla Walla back when it was first starting and you got to see what it was all like. I don't know, it gives me goosebumps just thinking about it. It's so fun. And the thing is, I'm not the only one. Now, of course, we have Karen McNeil talking about it. And then obviously, I think it's super cool. But I also got a message from a client who had joined me on last year's Walla Walla retreat. And she said that while Napa Valley is undoubtedly renowned, right, for its wines in California, Walla Walla offers a distinctive experience. Walla Walla is known for its intimate, boutique wineries, providing a more personalized and authentic atmosphere. And she likened this to some of the experiences we did, like at Declos, which I will talk about some of my favorite wineries at the end of this podcast. But she said, you know, like Declos, Delmas, Gramercy, Foundry, and Long Shadows, they all, and even some of these are quite big wines. Long Shadows is a pretty big winery, but it still felt like a personalized and authentic experience. She said, you know, compared to the larger scale operations that you find in Napa. And so the region of Walla Walla, its unique terroir results in wines with different flavor profiles. And Walla Walla also tends to be less crowded, allowing for a more relaxed and immersive tasting experience. And again, these are her words, not mine. Choosing Walla Walla over Napa offers a chance to explore a wine region with its own character and charm, and understanding the impact of volcanoes and rocks in the grapes. Like, oh, I love that. I think that's so fun. Nothing against Napa. I've had a great trip to Napa, but if you were going to go on one wine trip and you were going to visit one wine region, this is where I'm trying to tell you, you got to check out Walla Walla. It's just, it has that je ne sais quoi, you might say. That just, it's charming and it's a little different and you're going to get a whole lot more out of it. And you're probably going to spend a little less money too. So, I mean, win-win. That sounds good to me. Okay, so talking about visiting Walla Walla, let's get into some of the travel basics. So, first off, how do we get there? Now, like most wine regions around the world, not the easiest to get to, but 100% worth it. So, Walla Walla is about a 4.5 hour drive away from Seattle or a 30-minute flight. So, the flight is super simple, but the problem is so there is an airport in Walla Walla. But no matter where you're flying from, you'll have to make a stop in Seattle first. It's the only airport that has a connection to Walla Walla. So for those of us in Seattle, not a big deal. And for those of us that are outside of it, the Seattle airport is wonderful. You won't mind making a stop there. We have some great food. You can also fly into the Tri-Cities Airport in Pasco, Washington, and then take either a rental car or there is a bus line called the Grapeline bus down to Walla Walla. That Grapeline offers 3 round trips to Walla Walla daily, or at least they did while I was recording this. Now, once you get to Walla Walla, when it comes to getting around, there is all of like one Uber or Lyft driver in Walla Walla, so I would not rely on that. You will have to drive around, and while you can walk to some of the downtown wineries, of course, if you're downtown, many wineries are out of town. They're only about like the farthest one is like 30 minutes away, but still, you're going to need a car. So you're either going to need a designated driver and a rental car or hiring a car service. And there are some good options out there. My recommendation is Walla Walla Taxi if you're looking to hire somebody for a car service. I worked with them on my last retreat and I'm working with them again this year. It's a super nice guy. He's trying to grow this new business and he's had a lot of success. All right, so in terms of going around, do not rely on the Uber and Lyft drivers. They will not be there. Get yourself a rental car or hire somebody ahead of time. Now, where to stay? There are lots of great places. I'm going to tell you my top 2. These are places that I personally have stayed in Walla Walla and absolutely loved. So the first one is the Finch. This is a hotel. It's perfectly located on the corner of downtown, and it's like basically between downtown and I think Whitman College is the name of the college. So it's between those two. And so you can actually walk to the college, which is a really pretty walk. So one of my last retreat did that one of the mornings, and it was like, oh, so relaxing. It's a remodeled motel style, though they do have one building that's more traditional hotel. And when I say like motel style, it's like the idea that like your door faces like the outside, like you walk outside and then directly into your room. There's something nice about it to me. I don't know, but it is, it's nice and enclosed. I wouldn't worry about it too much. And it's very, very nice. Like not what you think of when you hear motel. Don't worry. It's totally remodeled, very fun, funky, cozy. And they have a courtyard with an outdoor fire pit and lots of fun like outdoor games to play. Another spot, if you're looking for something a little different, is the Wesley. This is where I stayed when I went with my husband. So it was just the 2 of us on like a little romantic trip. This was perfect for that. It's a little boutique hotel, gorgeous, just inside and out. They had a lot of fun with the design. Also has one of the biggest hot tubs I think I've ever seen in the backyard, and just general amazing outdoor space. If you're going during a time when you can be outside a lot, I would look into this. I think this could also be great on a girls' weekend. They have just regular bedrooms, but also a couple suites as well to rent. Do you ever feel like you're stuck in a rut, doing the same old thing day in and day out? You wake up, go to work, come home, go to bed, and repeat. When life gets busy, it can be easy to fall into that routine and forget how important it is to prioritize joy and fun. But what if I told you there was a way to break out of that cycle? A way to bring more excitement and adventure into your life. And it involves one of the most wonderful things in the world, wine. Introducing my Cork Crew Virtual Tasting Club. This is not your ordinary wine club. This is a community of people who are passionate about exploring new flavors, learning about different wine styles, and having fun along the way. Each month, we'll select 2 styles of wine to focus on. We'll taste them together virtually, all while learning more about the regions that the wines are from and the grapes that make the wine. You'll also have the opportunity to meet winemakers, sommeliers, and other wine professionals through our monthly community events. But it's not just about the wine. It's about breaking out of your routine, trying new things, and having a little fun. Imagine being able to impress your friends at your next dinner party with your newfound wine knowledge. Feeling confident when you walk into a wine shop, knowing exactly what to look for and what you'll enjoy. Imagine adding a little bit of excitement to your everyday life. So why not do something for you? Come join the Cork Crew Virtual Tasting Club and start exploring the endless sea of discovery and joy that is the world of wine. Sign up at my website, corkandfizz.com/thecorkcrew, and don't forget to use code WINE101 to get your first month free. And now, back to the show. Okay, and then last in terms of just kind of basics here, when to visit, I feel like this is a question I get a lot. I would say my two favorite times, like when I would recommend, would be early spring, so April or May, aka why the wine retreats are in April. You're starting to get to warmer temps, but it's not going to be too busy. And bud break has just started or is going to start. So the winemakers aren't too busy, but they're probably around. And then the other time is early September. And this is when I went with my husband. And this was kind of a cool time too, because you got to see the grapes on the vine. Hopefully by September, you avoid the summer heat. Actually, I'm remembering now, we went the end of August and it was still a little hot, like in the 90s. And so I think if you can wait until September, it'll cool down just a little bit. It'll be right around harvest, so things might be a little busier, but visiting a wine region during harvest is actually a really, really cool thing to do and get to see people doing. But you might not be able to interact with the winemakers as much because they're very busy. Now, the reason why I say these times, so summer, it can be super hot in Walla Walla. This is a desert-like climate, so they get very warm. It's also the busiest time for visitors, but it's going to be absolutely gorgeous and such a fun time. So like, don't not go during the summer because it's the only time you can go. It's going to be beautiful. And then in terms of winter, it could be cold enough for snow, so just be prepared for that. And many winemakers are either insanely busy in the early winter with their winemaking, or they're traveling in late winter because it's their off season. But it won't be nearly as busy in terms of just like the people visiting, so it could be super cozy. And I feel like you could probably snag like a great deal on a hotel during the winter, so that could be a fun time to go to. Okay, we have made it to probably my favorite part of this episode, which is sharing all of my favorite spots. So we're going to start with wineries. Now, Walla Walla itself, so I said there's only one other like separate AVA, and that's the Rocks District, but they tend to separate out the wineries in districts. I admittedly have not visited all of the different districts, so I'm going to focus on the ones that I have visited and a lot of the wineries that like I either have connections with or I was there because I want to make sure that I'm recommending things that I would definitely want to do myself. So we're going to start on the west side, and we're going to start with Gramercy Cellars. This winery is all about Rhone and Bordeaux style wines, but they're always trying new things. I love it. I've talked to the winemaker there, and he just said every year they like to do something new just to kind of like try it out. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. The winery is founded by a master sommelier, which I also think is very cool. His name is Greg Harrington. This was in 2005. I am a sucker for their Syrah, but they also make a really awesome Mourvedre. I've been obsessed with that varietal lately. It's the M in GSM, Mourvedre GSM from Rhone Valley, if you've ever heard of the GSM blend. And they also have a fun Peak Pool, which is like a very bright white wine also from the Rhone Valley. And also, I think you can find it in southern France too. And a Viognier that I also like from them. But basically, I love Gramercy Cellars wines. They have a small but very cozy tasting room. And on each of my wine retreats, so on my past one and on my next one, we'll be doing a tour through the cellar and the winemaking facility. So who knows, maybe if you send them an email when you're not with me, you might get that offer. But your best bet, come with me and we'll get to do like a full tour through everything. And they actually gave us some tastes from the barrel and from the tank. And we got to try wine at a lot of different phases. So Gramercy Cellars. Then you have Foundry Cellars. Foundry Cellars, they make incredible low intervention wines. They're really big into organic and biodynamics. If you want to learn about that, go check out Foundry Cellars. They also have deep roots in contemporary art and design. So their tasting room always hosts a contemporary art gallery, and there's a gorgeous outdoor sculpture garden. They also have what they call the Pet Project, and these are different Pet Nat sparkling wines. So if you're into sparkling wines, Foundry Cellars is definitely a must visit. All right, last one on the west side is Long Shadows. Long Shadows was founded by Alan Shoup, former president and CEO of Chateau Ste. Michelle Winery. Long Shadows is this unique partnership that brings seven of the world's most celebrated winemakers to Washington State's Columbia Valley. So basically, Shoup had this idea that Washington could create a lot of wines super similar to wines around the world. And so he wanted to show off what the valley could do. And so he brought in winemakers from these famous regions. So I think he brought in a German Riesling producer, he brought in a Spanish Tempranillo producer, he brought in a Bordeaux Cabernet producer, and each partner crafts a single standalone wine using the grape varieties for which they are best known to showcase the best of Columbia Valley. And I just think that is so neat. And their tasting room in Walla Walla, oh my God, we went on the last retreat in 2023. It is beautiful. It is covered in Chihuly glass. If you're not familiar, go look up Chihuly glass. It's beautiful. They have amazing views and a big patio. They're also a good spot to go to if you want some charcuterie while you're tasting. I always like to know which ones have like a really good charcuterie board. Long Shadows has a good one. And when we did the tasting there, we did this really fun comparative tasting with Riesling, but in different glassware. So the thing about that is I really love when a tasting room also has some education involved when you're doing the tasting. And so you can get that at Long Shadows. Okay, now moving to downtown. Now, technically, I've not visited either of these wineries, but I have tasted wine from both of them. So I know that they're worth a visit. So the first one is Dossier Wine Collective, and this is a new tasting room in Walla Walla. I believe it just opened. I think it opened at the end of 2023. Dossier was founded by ex-NFL player Cindy Rice and real estate entrepreneur Tim Lenahan. I had them on the podcast a little while back. Go find that interview. That was so fun talking to them. They just really want to show off the region's great potential. Again, all these people are like, I think when you're in Washington, you know that Washington makes great wine, but not a lot of people outside of Washington know that. So we're just trying to tell more people about how amazing our wine is. Dossier is definitely a little elegant, a little upscale, but not in a snobby way. So it's a great opportunity to kind of maybe put on that little fancy dress that you have or dress it up a little bit. The other winery in downtown that I think you should check out is called Pursued by Bear. This was founded by Kyle MacLachlan, which that name might sound familiar. He is an actor in Desperate Housewives, Sex and the City, and most famously, Twin Peaks. I don't have a podcast with him, but he did join the Court Crew for a fun tasting. So if you join the Court Crew membership, you can go back and watch that recording. He's actually a native of Yakima. So again, he wanted to show off what the state of Washington can do. So he created Pursued by Bear. He took a lot of time creating his tasting room. He wanted to be fun and charming. And they have really, really good wine. Like the Cabernet Sauvignon from there, like I'm remembering that. I had a taste of it and I used the Corbin, so it's still sitting in my cellar. And I'm like waiting for the right moment to pull that out again. Really, really good wine. All right, so the next district is the South Side. And apparently, this is where I visited most of the wineries because I'm familiar with a lot of them in this area. So the first one is Brook and Bull Cellars. This is from winemaker Ashley Trout. And this is her goal to kind of return to the roots of the varietal, make really balanced wines. If you've heard of Ashley Trout before, you may know her as the founder of Vital Wines. This is a winery where their goal is to improve equity and access to healthcare for vineyard workers and their families. So the winemaking and grapes for Vital Wines are often donated, so all the proceeds can go to the foundation and helping vineyard workers. So while I am shouting out Broken Bull, because you should definitely check out their wine, Vital Wines is also a great one, and they're actually downtown, also a good visit. On the next wine retreat to Walla Walla that I'm doing in April of 2024, we will be enjoying a Malbec side-by-side tasting of Brook and Bull, which I think will just be so wonderful. And we'll get to do it with Ashley herself. So like anytime you get to talk to the winemaker, I love it. Okay, next up on the south side is North Star. This winery is all about highlighting Merlot. And honestly, I think it's a grape that needs a little more attention. So I'm glad that they're doing it. And it's one of the early ones. It was founded back in 1994. What makes North Star special and why I have it on this list as an absolute must visit, they have an amazing blending class. You actually get to go in. They have 4 to 7 barrels of wine, and usually 4 of them are 4 different Merlots from different vineyards, and then there's a couple other blending grapes. And you get to make your very own wine. So you're going to blend it in a glass first, then you're going to put it in a bottle. You get to put a cork in it and literally take that bottle home. It's such a cool experience, and you best bet we are going to be doing it on this next retreat as well. And North Star has gorgeous views. If you can, I mean, they have these little cute cabanas. So if you're ever visiting just on your own, you can rent a cabana. Is it like potato? You can rent one of those and just look out at all the vineyards. And it is so, so pretty. And speaking of beautiful views, Caprio cellars. I mean, there's so many more things that are great about Caprio as well, but it's up kind of high. And so you get this really beautiful view of the valley. So Caprio was founded by Dennis Murphy, and the winery is all about family and tradition. So it's kind of the idea of creating the winery came from his memory of his great grandmother, Sanitella. And she knew each family in her small little Italian neighborhood by their homemade wine. And so he really wanted to kind of bring that there. His great grandmother also believed that when anybody entered her home, she should give them some wine and also feed them. So at Caprio, your tasting always comes with a delicious, perfectly paired, and often seasonally driven bite to eat with your wine. And one of the only places that you can find these days that has a free tasting fee. Yeah, you can just go and enjoy the wine. They like, you're our guest. We want you to enjoy. And lo and behold, amazingly, so many people come out of that winery with boxes of wine because they love it and they make it to pair with the food and it's delicious. Highly recommend. Okay, next up on the south side, we have Pepperbridge Winery. So this is owned and operated by three families. You have the McKibbins, the Murphys, and the Pellets. And the winery is a leader in quality winemaking. They care a lot about hospitality, which again is that whole thing about like making sure that you have a great experience while you're there, and innovative technology, which is always great when you see that coming into wineries. This Pepperbridge was one of the original wineries in Walla Walla, and they focus on, again, I talked about that hospitality. They have lots of fun experiences. So on our retreat in 2024, we'll be doing a custom food and wine pairing with a little winery tour. But these are actually experiences that are somewhat available for you to book. Now, it's not going to be a custom one for a group, but they do these kind of classes every once in a while, again, to kind of educate. I love that. And you can't go wrong when you're learning about wine while visiting a new tasting room. Okay, last two in the South Side District again. For some reason, I visited a lot of these. Next one is Sleight of Hand Cellars. This was started in 2007. The winemaking team of Trey Bush, Jerry Solomon, and Keith Johnson, they craft remarkable, highly rated red and white wines. They are also the winery. I don't know if you've ever seen their labels, but they have Neil Patrick Harris on one of their labels, which is kind of wild. I don't know how that happened. I should have looked up the story for that. But now that's a fun thing for you to go do. Go look up why Sleight of Hand Cellars has Neil Patrick Harris on one of their wine labels. It's a super fun, relaxed tasting room. They have over 3,000 vinyl albums. You can choose a song that you'd like to hear and they'll play it. They just have, a little queue going and you just add yours in. They often have food trucks in the summer. If you're just looking for like a nonchalant, just like chill, grab a glass, enjoy, talk with friends, Sleight of Hand is a great place to go. Plus, they have amazing wine. And lastly, on the south side, you have Valdemar Estates. This winery was started in Spain and has now been brought over to Washington, so you get an opportunity to try both Spanish and Washington wine. The tasting room, this is one of those where you go just to experience the tasting room because it's so pretty. They put a lot of work into the architecture of it, and you get these beautiful views of the vineyard. And if you can sit out on the patio when the sun is setting, perfect. Cody and I did that when we visited, and it just, I couldn't capture it on video well enough because it was in the moment, so wonderful. And the food here, oh my God. So I studied abroad in Spain when I was in college and I fell in love with Spanish food. It was literally like potatoes, eggs, and ham, which is like what I'm all about as a Midwestern girl. So, and seafood, which I never got much of in the Midwest, but I absolutely love. So the food here, they do that Spanish style food. They do these tapas and they also do paella dinners. Both of them are worth trying. If you're going to go here, you have to try the tapas. Like it's the wine is great and all, but you just can't leave without trying the tapas. Like there's tortilla española, which is like basically like an egg omelet with potato and onion. There's octopus if you're willing to try it. I think it's delicious. I'm trying to think of what other croquetas. I believe they still have those. Those are amazing. And again, the paella, it's a rice dish that's full of flavor. And yeah, you've got to eat something when you're at Valdemar. Okay, our last district is actually, they just call it Oregon. These are the wineries that are technically in Oregon. So these are even further south than the south side. The two here are two of my absolute favorites in Walla Walla. First, you have Delmas, and Delmas, they don't have a winery yet, but they do have a vineyard. And so this is family owned and operated. Delmas is kind of the realization of the whole family's dreams, which I think is so, it's just very sweet. They care so much for each other, to honor a distinctive place and a distinctive taste. And this family actually had they were a big part of making the Rocks District the AVA that it is. So Brooke Delmas Robertson, who is the vineyard manager and head winemaker, I think I said that right. I had her on the podcast a while back. She is just, if you're gonna learn so much just from listening to her for an hour. So go back and listen to that podcast if you haven't already. And then when you're in Walla Walla, you absolutely have to book a vineyard tour with Delmas so that you can learn from her. And actually, this is where you're going to get to walk through a vineyard in the Rocks District and see all those rocks. It is just it's so cool. I love it. Every time I've done it twice now, and we're doing it again a third time on this next retreat, and I know I'm going to learn even more. Now, the next winery is just, God, it's less than a mile away, I think, maybe around a mile, but it's Duclos Cellars. And so this is winemaker spouse Toby Turley and Chris Duclos. And their tasting room is right next to their home in this refinished garage space. So it just feels like they've invited you into their home to try their wines that they've been making. And there's something special about that. You probably can't see me, but I'm smiling real big. So I'm imagining when we were back there in April of last year, and it just felt like these people were like, hey, come on in, kick back, relax, here's a glass of wine. Their goal is to create, these memorable estate wine experiences at the foot of the Blue Mountains. And when you're out here in Oregon, you can see those Blue Mountains, and they're just in the background, and it's so pretty. I have to say, too, they are very funny and very entertaining. One of the wines that they shared with us the wine was called I'm Already Sorry. And so Chris, who's the husband in this scenario, told us the story behind this. And I guess it had something to do with the fact that he may have bought the grapes without double checking with Toby because he wanted to try something. And he had this great idea in mind. And so he kind of bought the grapes and asked for forgiveness afterwards. And that was his way of asking him, like, oops, I'm already sorry, but I did it. So now we're making this wine. And it was a great wine. So it turned out great. Worked out for him. But yeah, that's Duclos. Definitely book a tasting there. And you can also do like a tasting with the winemaker and a vineyard tour, which is great to do. Okay, those are some of my top wineries and places to visit. Now, what about food and restaurants, right? While you're there, you got to have some good food. Now, there's a lot of great options in Walla Walla. For being like a fairly small town and decently rural, you would think they wouldn't have a good food scene, but that is totally wrong. For breakfast, my top recommendations are Walla Walla Bread Co. They have a ridiculous amount of pastries, but even more than that, their menu is so good. I always got this toast that had, I think they called it something fancy, some other kind of word for toast, but it was like an herbaceous toast with these, not hard-boiled eggs, but like soft-boiled eggs. I don't know. I'm not describing it well, but it's the best thing I've ever eaten, I think. And I got it every single morning when I was in Walla Walla. But like I said, lots of pastries, a great matcha if you're not a coffee person. Go check them out. They also do wood-fired pizza, so it's a great spot for lunch as well. Another spot for breakfast is the Maple. This is kind of like your typical like diner breakfast, which, when I say typical, I mean like that big, huge, like I think my husband got like an omelet and then it came with either hash browns or pancakes, and he got the pancakes, and the pancakes were like, God, they were like, I don't know, nearly 12 inches across. Like it was a big pancake. I'm probably exaggerating. It's like the thing with the fish, but big pancake with the omelet. We went home with so much leftovers. So those are my favorite spots for breakfast. And then in terms of lunch, there's this cute little spot called Gray's, and they just do really good sandwich, like soup, sandwich, salad, simple but delicious. Great to do when you're kind of in between tastings. In terms of dinner, my top two recommendations, I would say the Kinglet, and unfortunately they closed at the beginning of this year. They were wonderful, but a good one to do in place of them is called the Passatempo Taverna, and they make really delicious Italian food. And then another one is Public House 124, kind of your like a little bit upscale bar, but not really. Like, it's just very homey. We went to this on the last retreat. We had like a welcome party on the first night, and then a small group of us went to go get dinner. And this was just such a perfect spot for it. A huge menu, lots of different options, and just kind of felt like, you were hanging out with friends. So Public House 124. And honestly, you can't go wrong with nearly any of the restaurants that are in Walla Walla. We've had when I went on the last retreat, everybody kind of tried out some different spots on different nights, and everybody came back with raving reviews. So good food scene out there. Well, I'm hoping now, after you've heard me just gush about Walla Walla for half an hour, you are ready to visit. If you are, I'm just going to plug one more time. There are any spots open on my retreat in April of 2024. I'd love for you to join me. If it is past that and you're listening to this later, you should go take a trip to Walla Walla, Washington. You will not regret it. It is a wonderful, wonderful place. If you enjoyed this episode of the Cork and Fizz Guide to Wine podcast, please let me know. And let me know what other areas would you like me to talk about. I would prefer to, hit up regions that I've visited before when I'm telling you about traveling. So I visited Napa, Sonoma, Santa Barbara, and Willamette Valley. So if you'd like to hear about any of those, let me know. Send me a message on Instagram at Cork and Fizz, or email me, haley@corkandfizz.com. If you love this episode as much as I did, I'd love it if you could take a quick second, rate it, leave a review. You know how this works. Take a picture, take a screenshot, hit the share button, send it to a friend, share it on your social media. Let people know that they need to learn about wine from me. And of course, don't forget to subscribe so you never miss an episode. I have a new episode coming out every Wednesday. And speaking of a new episode, next week I'll be interviewing the wife and wife team behind Comings to Dreams out of Santa Barbara, California. If Walla Walla is my favorite region in the world, I think Santa Barbara is a close second. And these two winemakers are such great representatives of the region. I can't wait for you to hear from them. Thanks again for listening, and as a thank you, I'd like to share my free shopping guide, 15 wines under $15. Simply head to my website, corkandfizz.com, scroll down to the bottom, and join my mailing list. Cheers!